Welcome to Silver Story Lab. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Ian David stood in the doorway of the bed, watching his wife Jillian Turner clutch her stomach with theatrical precision. She'd been fine 20 minutes ago, laughing at something on her phone, hair perfect, dress already laid out for the family dinner they'd planned for weeks. "I'm really sorry, Ian. I just feel awful suddenly. We need to cancel." He studied her face the way he'd studied countless witnesses during his 15 years as a prosecutor. The micro-expressions didn't match the words. Her pupils weren't dilated with pain. Her breathing was steady, not labored. She was lying, and she wasn't even good at it. "I'll call everyone," he said quietly. "You rest." Relief flooded her features. Too much relief for someone genuinely ill. Ian made the calls from his study, apologizing to his parents, his sister, Jillian's uncle Barry Moreno. Everyone understood. Everyone sent their wishes for Jillian's recovery. But Ian's prosecutorial instincts were screaming. He'd noticed changes over the past month. Jillian had become secretive with her phone, jumpy at unexpected sounds, distant in conversations. When he'd asked if something was wrong, she'd smiled and said work was stressful. She taught art at a community college, hardly the kind of job that caused this level of anxiety. That evening, while Jillian remained in bed, Ian took out the trash. Their neighbor, Marco Sellers, was checking his mailbox despite the late hour. "Hey, Ian." Jillian feeling better. "Better." Marco's expression shifted, uncomfortable. "Oh, I saw her earlier. In my driveway, actually." She seemed upset. Ian's blood chilled. "When was this?" "Around 4. I was coming home from work. She was sitting in her car, crying. I asked if she was okay, and she got out, apologized for something, said it wasn't finished yet, and that she was sorry." Marco shrugged awkwardly. "I figured you two had a fight or something. Didn't mean to pry." "No, I appreciate you telling me." Ian forced a casual smile. "We did have a disagreement. I'll talk to her." But they hadn't fought, and Jillian had been home all afternoon, or so she claimed. Ian didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., while Jillian slept beside him, he carefully took her phone from the nightstand. He knew her passcode. They'd always been open about such things, or so he'd thought. The recent messages made his stomach drop. Unknown number. Tonight was the perfect opportunity. "Why did you back out?" "Jillian, I can't do it. Not like this." "Unknown. You want justice for Cindy or not?" "He killed her, Jillian." "You know he did." "Jillian, I know, but I need more time. I'm not ready." "Unknown. You'll never be ready. It has to be done." Ian scrolled back. Weeks of messages, all variations on the same theme. Someone was convincing Jillian that he'd killed someone named Cindy. The name struck him like a physical blow. Cindy Williamson, Jillian's younger sister. She died 7 years ago in a car accident on a mountain road. Single vehicle crash, ruled accidental. Ian had never met her. She died 6 months before he and Jillian started dating. But Jillian rarely spoke about her. The grief ran too deep. More messages revealed a horrifying picture. The unknown number had been feeding Jillian evidence that Ian had somehow orchestrated Cindy's death. Photographs of Ian's car near the accident site. Impossible. He'd been in another state. Testimony from witnesses who'd seen him arguing with Cindy. He'd never met her. Bank records showing payments to a mechanic who'd tampered with brakes, completely fabricated. And instructions. Detailed instructions on how to kill him and make it look like an accident. The family dinner was supposed to be the moment. Something about food poisoning affecting only Ian. But Jillian had lost her nerve. Ian's hands trembled as he screenshotted everything and sent it to his own phone. Then he carefully replaced Jillian's phone and went to his study. He pulled up the file he'd kept on Cindy's death. After he and Jillian married, he'd quietly investigated. Not because he suspected foul play, but because understanding what happened helped him support Jillian through her grief. The police reports, witness statements, accident reconstruction, all pointed to a tragic accident caused by brake failure. But now, looking at it with fresh eyes and the knowledge that someone was framing him, Ian saw something else. The mechanic who'd last serviced Cindy's car had disappeared 3 months after her death. The insurance payout had gone to Cindy's boyfriend at the time, who was listed as the beneficiary on a policy taken out just weeks before the crash. Ian pulled up the boyfriend's name from the old file, Lester Schwartz. A chill ran through him. He searched Jillian's contacts. The unknown number wasn't saved, but he ran it through a reverse lookup service he'd used during his prosecutor days. Burner phone, but the location pings clustered around a residential address. Ian cross-referenced it with property records. The house was owned by a shell company, but the utility bills went to Lester Schwartz. Ian called his old colleague, Alan Stevens, who now worked as a defense attorney. They met at a coffee shop the next morning while Jillian was supposedly at work. "Let me get this straight," Alan said, reviewing the evidence Ian had compiled overnight. "Your wife's ex-brother-in-law-to-be has convinced her that you killed her sister 7 years ago, and now she's planning to murder you. That's the summary, yes. And you think Lester actually killed Cindy? He was the beneficiary on a life insurance policy. The mechanic who serviced her car vanished, and now he's desperate enough to frame me and manipulate Jillian into committing murder." Ian leaned forward. He's scared of something. Maybe the mechanic resurfaced, or maybe there's new evidence. But he needs a different villain. Alan whistled low. "This is insane. You need to go to the police." "And tell them what?" "My wife has been manipulated into planning my murder by a man who might have killed her sister, based on text messages that could be interpreted a dozen ways." Ian shook his head. Jillian would be arrested. Her life would be destroyed, and Lester would disappear before we could prove anything. "So what's your plan?" "I prove Lester killed Cindy. I expose him, and I save my wife from becoming a murderer." Ian's jaw set. "I just need to find the mechanic. After 7 years? That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible. I was the best prosecutor in the district for a reason." It took Ian 3 days of relentless investigation. He tracked the mechanic, Jim Barron, through old employment records, credit card transactions, and finally to a small town in Nevada where he was living under a different name. Ian flew out and confronted him in a diner. Jim was a broken man, haunted by what he'd done. "Lester paid me 20 grand to cut the brake lines," Jim confessed, his hands shaking around a coffee cup. "Said it was a prank, that the car wouldn't be driven far. I didn't know he meant to kill her. When I saw the news, I ran. Been running ever since." "Why didn't you go to the police?" "Lester has connections. Made it clear if I talked, I'd disappear. And who'd believe a mechanic over a respectable guy like him?" "I believe you." Ian slid a paper across the table. "And you're going to testify? I'll get you immunity and witness protection. But you have to do exactly what I say." Jim stared at the document. A formal statement Ian had prepared. "Why are you doing this? You could just divorce your wife and walk away." "Because she's a victim too. Lester killed her sister, and now he's destroying her life to save himself." Ian's voice hardened. "And I don't let killers win. Ever." Back home, Ian found evidence that Jillian had purchased life insurance on him. $2 million, with her as the beneficiary. The policy was only 3 weeks old. Lester's messages had intensified, pressuring her to act. But Ian also found something else. A journal hidden in Jillian's art studio. Pages of anguished writing about her grief, her confusion, her growing doubts about the evidence Lester had provided. She loved Ian. She didn't want to believe he was capable of murder. But Lester was her only link to Cindy's memory, and he'd exploited that ruthlessly. The latest entry was dated yesterday. "I can't do this. I won't do this. But if I tell Ian, he'll think I'm insane. If I tell Lester I won't help, what will he do? I'm trapped." Ian's anger crystallized into resolve. Jillian wasn't a villain. She was a victim of a master manipulator who'd spent years grooming her for this moment. He had to end this. Tonight, Ian set the trap carefully. He called Jillian and said he'd be working late, going through case files at his old office. Then he contacted Detective Darren Piper, someone he'd worked with dozens of times during his prosecutor days. "I need you to trust me," Ian said, "and I need you to bring backup to this address at exactly 8 p.m. He gave Darren Lester's address and sent him everything: Jim's statement, the text messages, the insurance policy, the accident reports with annotations showing the evidence of murder. "This is enough for a warrant," Darren said. "We can arrest him. I need him to confess. I need him to admit what he's been doing to my wife." Ian's voice was cold. Can you give me 1 hour before you move in? Ian, this is dangerous. 1 hour. Please. Darren sighed. 1 hour. But if I hear anything going sideways, I'm coming in early. At 7 p.m., Ian texted Lester from a burner phone, pretending to be Jillian. I did it. Ian's dead, but we need to meet. I'm scared. Lester responded immediately. Where? Your house. 7:30. I can't be seen anywhere public. Ian arrived first, picking Lester's lock with skills he'd learned during an investigation years ago. He positioned himself in the living room and waited. Lester Schwartz walked in at 7:35, smiling. He was a well-dressed man in his 40s, confident and handsome, the kind of person who could manipulate others easily. Jillian, he called. Where are you? She's not here. Ian stepped from the shadows. But I am. Lester's face went white, then flushed with rage. How? How am I alive? Because my wife couldn't go through with your plan. Because despite all your manipulation, she loves me more than she hates the lie you sold her. You need to leave before I call the police. Ian laughed. Call them. Please. I'd love to explain to Detective Piper why you've been orchestrating my murder to cover up killing Cindy Williamson 7 years ago. Lester's composure cracked. You can't prove anything. Jim Barron is ready to testify. He'll tell everyone how you paid him to cut Cindy's brake lines, how you took out life insurance on her and collected $200,000 when she died. Ian circled closer. Why did you kill her, Lester? Did she find out about your other schemes? Or did you just need the money? She was going to leave me. Lester's control shattered. Everything I'd built, the reputation, the business, she knew about the fraud. She was going to report me. I had no choice. You had a choice. You chose murder. Ian pulled out his phone, stopping the recording. And now you've confessed. Lester lunged at him, but Ian had spent years in courtrooms facing down violent criminals. He sidestepped, letting Lester crash into the wall. The front door burst open. Darren Piper and 3 officers rushed in. Perfect timing, Ian said. Mr. Schwartz just confessed to the murder of Cindy Williamson. As officers cuffed Lester, Ian played the recording. The man's face contorted with rage and despair. You're insane, Lester spat. This is entrapment. No, Darren said, reading him his rights. This is justice. Ian found Jillian at their home, sitting in the dark. She looked up when he entered, her face streaked with tears. I know everything, he said gently. She broke down completely. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Ian. I believed him. I thought you. Lester killed Cindy. He manipulated you to hide his crime and frame me. Ian sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. But you didn't go through with it. You couldn't. That's what matters. I almost murdered you, but you didn't. And now Lester will spend the rest of his life in prison. He tilted her chin up. You're a victim, Jillian. He exploited your grief. That's on him, not you. They sat together as he explained everything. Jim's testimony, the evidence, the confession. Jillian listened, her body shaking with sobs. What happens now, she asked. Now you get help. Therapy. Time to heal. Ian paused. And we decide if our marriage can survive this. She looked at him, eyes full of pain and hope. Do you want it to? I want you to be okay first. The rest we'll figure out. 3 months later, Ian stood in a courtroom watching Lester Schwartz being sentenced to life in prison without parole for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Jim Barron, granted immunity, had testified against him. The case was airtight. Corinne Foley, Cindy's best friend, approached Ian after the sentencing. Thank you, she said. We always knew something wasn't right about that accident, but we had no proof. Justice took too long, Ian replied. But it came. Jillian had moved to a temporary apartment while undergoing intensive therapy. They talked regularly, slowly rebuilding trust. Ian had recommended a colleague, Dr. Nadine Leonard, who specialized in trauma and manipulation. Their marriage was uncertain. The betrayal ran deep, even if Jillian had been the one betrayed first. But Ian believed in second chances, for people who deserve them. As he walked out of the courthouse, his phone buzzed. A text from Jillian. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for seeing the truth. I love you. Ian smiled. Maybe they'd make it. Maybe they wouldn't. But he'd done what he set out to do. Exposed a killer, protected his wife, and proved that intelligence and patience could defeat even the most manipulative villain. He'd turned a trap meant for him into Lester's own cage. And in the end, that was victory enough.